Namaskar, sir.
Namaste.
Namaskar, everybody.
Can you see our little audience?
I can see the distinguished class. Yes.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Few and far between, but nice. It's the quality that matters. I can see they are all very nice people.
Not quantity.
I met them earlier also, I think, once or twice.
Yes.
I'm sorry that, we have these problems I have, because last minute I try to join and then I'm not very good at this.
No problem. No problem at all. So if we may start with a very brief introduction.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I will not list out all your achievements and titles. I will simply recall that.
No, you should simply say he needs no introduction because he has no introduction.
I will simply say, nevertheless, that you have been a pioneer for 40, 50 years in, let us say broadly, India's intellectual traditions, which have various names, sometimes called Indian knowledge systems and other things. And you have been teaching, you were teaching at JNU in particular, not only English in the Center of Language and Linguistics, but also as a professor of Sanskrit in the Special Center of Sanskrit Studies, now renamed, I believe, School of Sanskrit and Indic Studies, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And which you actually founded or co-founded. And therefore, this concern for Sanskrit and intellectual traditions and the interaction between the two has been at the center of your preoccupations for a very long time, which is why we are extremely happy to have you as our first speaker in this course. I will remind our audience that this year we are dealing with the living traditions of Sanskrit to basically deal with this frequent popular misconception that Sanskrit is a dead language, and whether dead or not, in any case, it doesn't have much relevance to the life of India today, social or intellectual or artistic or whatever it may be. So, Kapilji, may I engage our conversation? So we have about 50 minutes or so.
Yes, sir.
We'll continue this exchange next week with a slightly different set of concerns, which I will share with you
yes, sir.
later on. By asking this very question, first of all, what does it mean if we say that Sanskrit is a dead language? It is true that we will not hear Sanskrit in the streets of Indian cities normally. So what does it mean to make such an assertion? How do we compare Sanskrit with, for example, Latin, which is regarded as a dead language of Europe?
Greek.
And if this is not an accurate designation for Sanskrit, then how would you portray those living traditions? In what ways is Sanskrit still living with us? Is the first question I would like to put to you.
Thank you very much. And thanks very much for your kind introduction also. There's a small correction. This is my 63rd year of teaching. So you see, I started in 1960, and to the disappointment of many friends, I'm still continuing. The very question, Sanskrit is a dead language, is a silly question. It's a very silly, I don't even understand why such a question should be asked. I will start with a small anecdote. You have mentioned that in my time, the Center for Sanskrit Studies was set up, Special Center for Sanskrit Studies. And sir, you were very much a part of all that process. You know that instead of putting that center in the school, then it was School of Languages. School of Languages, which when I became dean, I converted it in nomenclature, at least, tried in other things also, to change it to, and it is now known as School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies. So it was School of Languages, in which you had all languages from Bhasha Lao to to Greek and to not Greek, but to German and all European languages, all Asian languages, Arabic, Persian, but not Sanskrit. So in my time, I will say that it's wrong for me to say that I set up because today I can't even build a small 5x5 room, so it was because I was part of JNU at that time and I happened to be in a particular position. In my time, the center was set up. When it was set up, we did not put it in the School of Languages. We made it an independent special center for Sanskrit studies with an independent building. And building is also very necessary because I managed to push swastik as the design of that building, swastik. And the JNU, some people in JNU are still very disturbed about it because when they land in Delhi at night, the plane flies over JNU campus and they see the swastik lights, like a stamp on JNU, the swastik stamp on JNU. I hope our young people are not confusing our swastik with the German swastik. Although my reading of European history and my reading of what other people did to Germans and then what Germans did to them is a very complicated history. But then swastik is a very, very sacred sign of basically the Jain community, see? And of course of Hindus and others. But we made it in the swastik at that time, managed as I said. Ho gaya. Now, a separate building. Now, somebody asked my friend now, Professor Rajneesh Kumar Mishra, that why have you made taken Sanskrit out of the School of Languages and made it a separate center, a separate building? His answer is very interesting. He said, you see, you say Sanskrit is a dead language. How can we put ourselves with living languages? You are all living languages. So we decided to stay away because you say we are a dead language. And secondly, you say this is a Deva Bhasha, language of gods. So how can we then stay with the languages of human beings? That is your languages. तो इसलिए हमने सोचा हम अलग ही ठीक है. And Sanskrit is in fact a different language. You see, it's a very, very different language in the sense that it's in the 19th century, when Germans and American scholars of German origin studied the Ashtadhyayi, Panini's Ashtadhyayi, the grammar, and they found it so perfect that they thought that this could not be a natural human language. In fact, Professor Dwight Whitney, a very great scholar, he even made a passing statement that Sanskrit must be an artificial language. You see, it is so perfect. Now, of course, he didn't mean it because no one was more aware than Whitney of the massive body of literature, intellectual and imaginative, created in Sanskrit. So massive that the intellectual, imaginative literature, granthas of all the language of the world put together are less than the body of intellectual granthas in Sanskrit. Even just Vedic Vangmaya, the Vedic Vangmaya, beginning with the Veda, which is in the mind, to the text, which is a, kind of concretization of what is in the mind, to Samhitas, the continuous texts, to the various variant pathas of the Veda, then the Brahmana, the liturgical Granth for each Veda, then the Aranyakas, then the Upanishads, and then the Pratishakyas, and then the Dharma Shastras. I mean, if you look at that body of literature, that immense body of literature, it will be quite silly to say that it is created in Esperanto, an artificial language. So Sanskrit is a different language, very different language, because I think it fell into the hands of, or it was the language of the people who lived in a land which was naturally blessed by nature. You see, in India has the only topography. You come down from the highest mountains in the world, and you have plains, alluvial plains with massive rivers coming from those mountains, watering those alluvial plains, stretching more than 2,000 miles across and about 1,200 to 1,500 miles deep. You see, this is a unique in the world, and it has the capacity, potential to produce an immense body, immense amount of food. In fact, in Bihar, in the rainy season, all you need to do is to throw a few seeds of ghia and tori and katal, and you simply sit back, and you will be overwhelmed by thousands of ghiyas. Even if you distribute, you won't be able to. So we were in a blessed land, which means the language is of the people who lived in a land which was blessed by nature. That's why they called nature mother. And that gave them the leisure. In order to think, you need leisure. If you are working all the time for your next meal, you cannot, reflect and think. So it became very meditative, reflective, introverted civilization. And the world outside was not such that needed their correction or their thinking. They looked inside. In fact, they looked with their eyes shut. You see, they looked with their eyes shut. It was not the EYE, I which observe, but I, the first person nominative singular, the Atma, the self which became one and thought and produced an immense body of literature. Now I'm saying that this is a silly question because do languages die? I mean, what do you mean by dying? Because dying is a phenomena of organic bodies, what are organic. If you say a language is dead, you got to tell us when did it die? And you have to tell us when was it born? Because if it is dead, then it must have been born. So when is a language born? And when does a language die? Do languages die? That is the question that you're very bright young people. So I am going to take Sarah. So you got to keep track of what I'm saying, sir, and help me because I suffer from incipient dementia, this loss of immediate memory. So I was talking about the
fact that stating that a language is dead is not.
That means that it's an organic being, organic body. You see, it's an organism. It's an organism. It has to be born and then it dies. So can anybody even forget the language? Take any word, single word. Can you tell us when that word was first used? And when can you tell us that when the word stopped being used? In Mahabhashya, Patanjali's Mahabhashya, there is a very nice small debate. As you know, Mahabhashya is a multi-logic text, not dialogic only. There are three persons there. Most Indian commentatorial texts, not most, but all major ones, intellectual texts are dialogic. They are not monologic. They are dialogic. There is a question answer. There is a Purva Paksha, the other point of view. And then there is the Siddhanta, the one who argues. So in that Mahabhashya, the boy, Manda Buddhi Chhatra, he's a character in that drama, which is enacted before you, mental drama. The ideas are being, shifted back and forth, and you become a witness to how the conclusion is reached. So you feel almost that you have reached the conclusion. So there is a Manda Buddhi Chhatra. Now that Manda Buddhi Chhatra asks the most simple and therefore the most difficult question. So see, he's talking about language, the Nitya, Shabda Nitya hai, Shabda Nitya hai. Now Shabda, the word Shabda has many meanings. Shabda means a sound, Shabda means word, and Shabda also means language. It is a Nitya. Nitya, and he also says Siddha. Siddha, it is there. Paka hua hai. Like he gives the example of a housewife that when she cooks rice, you see, then after some time, she just picks up one grain and tests. And if that one grain is cooked, she takes off the utensil, the whole rice. This is called Tandul Nyaya. Tandul Nyaya. This is called meta rule hai, Tandul Nyaya. If that one grain is cooked, the entire rice is cooked. See? So he says that when he says that it is a Nitya, Nitya can mean, they often translate as eternal, but it is not eternal. It is given. It's there. And it is Siddha. It's Siddha. Ye hai, Shabda hai. The Shabda Artha Sambandha, the meaning and the form and the meaning, the word and the meaning, they are given. Nobody creates it. It's given. It comes to you. You see? And it is Nitya. Then also Nitya means it is always there. So then the Mandabuddhi Chhatra says, what about obsolete words? Obsolete words. And the Siddhantin, the teacher says, for example, and in English I will say, let's say, in English he will say, for example, dine, Thine, dine, or oft, English, or anhaga. In the Wanderer poem of 8th century, oft him anhaga are jabidith. This is English. So obsolete word, and he says, which one? For example, jabidith. And the teacher says, but you have just spoken it. You have uttered this word. And therefore, how can the word be obsolete? You may not be using it, but the universe is so large of usage, maybe somebody is using it. And then there are grantha, texts, compositions, where the words is being used. So it's very much there. So Patanjali says, even words are not obsolete. And how can you talk of a language being dead? Language being dead. How was it? When was it? To my mind, in fact, in one of the introductions that I wrote to the language report, when people are worried about dying languages, languages are dying, they are becoming extinct. Languages don't die. The speakers of the languages die. It's not languages which die. The speakers die. Sometimes the Jaravas of Andaman, I think the speaker of that dialect of the Andamans, the speakers maybe at one time there were 4 or 5, now it is only 1. But I think 349 theses have been written about him, about the language dying and all that. Now, if languages don't die, Because you note it down, you put it down in paper, it is there. You want to study it, you can study it. It's very much there. If death means absence, there is no absence. There is a presence, and the presence is of so many kinds. The presence is so many kinds. It's not only, we can't by saying dead means that the whole community does not speak or no longer speaks the language. The whole community no longer. But suppose I say that in a state in let us say Bengal. Bengal has 8 official languages. You see, and Punjabi is one of them. So Punjabi is spoken there, Urdu is spoken there, Assamese is spoken there. So all the people do not speak one language. They speak so many languages. So if only a small number of people speak a language, so that language is not a language, it is a dead language. Is that so? But in other words, I'm asking you young people to ask yourself, what is the index of a living language? What are the indices of a living language? जिसको आप living कहते हैं. Let me say, although today it's not true that Sanskrit has no speakers. Sanskrit, there must be 100,000 teachers of Sanskrit in India, in universities and colleges, who speak Sanskrit every day. But if you say that they must only speak of, Maltal, of buying and selling, only then it is a language. Huh? You can't say that. So 100,000 speakers. And practically, hundreds of universities around the world are teaching Sanskrit. Students are learning Sanskrit. They are speaking Sanskrit. And in 200,000 marriages that take place in India, in every marriage season, the Pandits are speaking Sanskrit. Sanskrit being spoken. And in the Sola Sanskar, from birth to death, you see the individual life in the Hindu system is very nicely structured from birth to death. At birth, Sanskrit is spoken, and at death, Sanskrit is spoken. Now you may say it's not only a question of speaking, it's also a question of understanding. People don't understand. Well, I can take you to lectures on philosophy, Austin's philosophy in English, and make people sit and ask them how many understand that lecture. It is English being spoken. How many understand? So that cannot be the parameter. So what are the indices of a living language? So the whole question is very, very silly. You enter any library in the world and you go to the Indology section and you have 100,000 books, with Sanskrit. And it is perhaps the world's largest translated language in the world. You see, largest translated language. And it's not only the past. It started long back. The Persians, in the return of the Christian era, they translated, the grammar and philosophy, Shastras. And from Persian, it went to the Arabs, arithmetics and astronomy. I'll give you the evidence. You see what are called Arabic numerals. The Western people call them Arabic numerals because they received those numerals from the Arabs after the Turkish conquest of Constantinople. You see, the numerals. And they call them Arabic numerals. And we also call them because today we are inheritors of a great intellectual knowledge-centered civilization. But we are not the same people as our ancestors. We are not the same people as those who created that body of knowledge. We are different. We are a different breed. We are a bonsai people, a bonsai civilization now. We were a massive banyan civilization in knowledge. And we are now a bonsai civilization because we have given up our languages. And we have, as Sri Aurobindo said, if a community loses its language, it loses its soul. So it's like we're different people. But then the massive Arabic numerals, do you know what the Arabs call them? Arabs call 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The Arabs call them Hinse. Hinse. You know what is Hinse? Hindse. Hindse. So the Arabs call them Hinse. And we call them Arabic numerals. You see? Though it was borrowed first century, but you can say that is long back. So many people borrowed. We have records of, 9th century, the Arab astronomers visiting Ujjain to meet Varahamihir. So that Arab astronomer must have read his Sanskrit texts, you see, and come and tend to discuss with Varahamihir in Ujjain. We often have to talk about the great city of Vienna, which is in any case a very beautiful and a very great city, and distinguished musicians, Mozart and others, and philosophers and thinkers and Freud and all that. But Ujjaina, our Ujjaina is no less. You had Kalidas, you had Bhartrihari, you had Varahamihir.
Can I ask you something? So we agree, of course, that this question of this label of dead language doesn't have much meaning at all. But then in that case, how do we document apart from the scholarly world? You speak of literature, you speak of libraries, you speak of scholarly studies, Indologies, and all that, of course, is quite valid. And we can fill volumes with admirative statements from Western and, of course, Indian students of all those disciplines. But in the life of India today, how do we trace the presence of Sanskrit is what I would like to ask you.
First of all, there are living speakers of Sanskrit also. They may be very small in number, but there are living speakers of Sanskrit who speak Sanskrit as their mother tongue. And that's one thing, although it's not very relevant. The Sanskrit, I will read a sentence from the Sanskrit Commission, if you don't mind, sir. Look at this, the Sanskrit Commission. The Commission stated that Sanskrit is the embodiment of Indian culture and civilization. It then observes that the Indian people look upon Sanskrit as the binding force for the different people of this great country, which was described as the greatest discovery which the Commission had made as it traveled from Kerala to Kashmir, and Kamarup to Saurashtra. The Commission, while so traveling, found that though the people of the country differed in a number of ways, they all were proud to regard themselves as participants in the common heritage, and that heritage emphatically is the heritage of Sanskrit. So you see, the consciousness of the people, the unity of consciousness, India becomes one entity, not by language or religion or ethnicity. We have 4,800 jatis, and we have 100,000 minor, ethnic groups. We have so many languages. We have so many faiths. But yet, India is one. How does it become one? Now, if those who doubt that India is one, because they read this modern constitution very carefully, I will request them to read Vishnu Puran, 2nd century BC. And I will request them to look at Ptolemy's map of India. Ptolemy's map of India. We people, our constitution makers also had doubts whether we are not a nation, you see, because nation, they picked up the nation from post-Bismarck, post-1881 Europe. When the Austro-Hungarian Empire broke up, it broke up into small ethnic states, France, Norway, Germany, Belgium, and nation as a political theory became an entity with one language, one race, and one religion. So our constitution makers, great products of our education system like us, they were very worried. The nation, one language, one race, oh, India is not a nation. So they started building India as a nation. But India is a civilization. India is not a nation. And India has been a civilization from the beginning. The foreign travelers who came to India, Megasthenes, 4th century BC, Fahyan, Hyun Sang, It Singh, Ibn Battuta, you can go on mentioning right down to 19th century when the British and the Irish travelers traveled across the country and left their diaries. The foreigners have never had any doubt that this is one country, India. No doubt. But we English educated Indians started questioning ourselves. Now we become one. We become the word which people dislike, at least they disliked till a particular point. Rashtra. This word is an ancient word. You know, Atharva Veda, Bhumi Sukta in Atharva Veda says, there is a shloka there. Oh Mother Earth, destroy those who want to subdue my Rashtra by Shastra or Shastra. Mother Earth, destroy those who want to subdue my Rashtra by Shastra or Shastra. You see, there is between Shastra, the weapon, and Shastra, the idea. The difference is only of one matra, one vowel length. And that's because the two are interdependent. You need Shastra to protect Shastra, and you need Shastra to create the Shastra. Without that, an Indian civilization, being the world's oldest knowledge-centered and the only surviving civilization of the 46 human civilizations, you see, it survives because of its knowledge centricity. And that knowledge is carried by a language. Not only carried, it is still carried. You see, look at the terminologies. Look at आपकी जितनी शब्दावली है, the intellectual terminology, conceptual terminology of different domains, all of that comes from the Sanskrit. And the words are so ordinary. Those technical words, I'll give you an example. In 7th century BC, Ashtadhyayi, 7th century BC we are talking of, there was no Europe, there was no America, you see, and 7th century BC had a great intellectual achievement, Ashtadhyayi, as Bloomfield said. Bloomfield in 1934 in his book, Language says, Leonard Bloomfield is a very great scholar, American scholar of German origin. And it's a celebrated book, Language. He said, Panini's Ashtadhyayi is one of the greatest monuments of human intelligence. One of the greatest monuments of human intelligence. And this is 1934. And we are talking of a dead language. And he's talking of the grammar of that dead language. One of the greatest monuments of human intelligence. 7th century BC, the first two sutras, the sutras are abbreviated aphoristic statements. The first two, sutras, the first one, Vriddhir Adech. Vriddhir Adech. The word vriddhi, vriddhi, आत्त का एच बनना वृद्धि. वृद्धि is a technical word in Ashtadhyayi 2800 years ago. Vridhi. I want to ask you, how many of you understand that word vridhi even today in your language? Vridhi. What is vridhi? Can you tell me what is vridhi? What is vridhi?
Growth.
Yes, growth, increase. So a word which was a technical word 2800 years ago is now an ordinary language word in all the Indian languages. In my JNU class, I had students from all religions, all religions, all faiths. And everybody understood this word, which was a technical. Second word, second sutra, Adainga Guna. Adainga Guna. आ का ए होना, जैसे होता है ना महा ईश्वर महेश्वर, आ ई ए, अदैंग गुण. Gun. Do you understand? Gun is a technical word in Ashtadhyayi. Gun means modulation of the sound. Modulation of the sound. Now, gun. Do you understand the word gun today? Have you used that word? Do you know use that word? Say, and nod your head if you have. Gun शब्द तो है ना. अब देखिए एक टेक्निकल शब्द 2800 साल पुराना, if not 3000 years old, आपकी भाषा का एक आम शब्द है. The vocabulary, the technical terminology, I'm talking technical, even ordinary words. If you look at the vocabulary of Indian languages, they, if you take a mean, M-E-N, mean means the medium of all Indian languages, almost 80% of the vocabulary of Indian languages comes from Sanskrit, tat sam or tad bhav, in the same form or in a phonologically modulated form. You see, for example, in my mother tongue, Punjabi, because I belong to Amritsar, and in fact, Sanskrit, this was the heart of the Sanskrit spoken landscape. Punjab, Pakistan, Punjab, this northwest India, this was the heartland of spoken, not only spoken Sanskrit, but of the intellectual Sanskrit also. Because in the Textile University, you had great physicians like Charak, you had people like Chanakya, and you had people like Panini. You had great minds, and right up to, because the Silk Route and the Patliputra, the capital of the Mauryas, the great empire. So the Indians created not only an empire terra firma, but also an empire of terra cognita, an empire of the mind. And Sanskrit empire through Asia was created not by the force of arms, but by the power of ideas. That is why all the other language empires, French Empire, Persian Empire, and the English Empire also, international, now it is receding. The Chinese are overtaking it, you see. So all these language empires were created by military might. But the Sanskrit empire was created by the power of ideas. And this empire is the only empire which is still alive. So look at the vocabulary. मैं आम शब्द बोलते हैं. We speak words. We take them as, we say, अरे क्या यार, फिर वही बोलते. परमात्मा, आत्मा, ध्येय, janam, mrityu, moksha, and all these words. These are very, 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 very thick conceptual words. Very thick conceptual words. But we take them as very ordinary. They are ordinary. So what has happened is that the knowledge, when you say the words which were spoken then are being used then are being spoken today. So it's not only a continuity of words, it's a continuity of ideas. And those ideas are in the minds of the ordinary people. This is where Sanskrit is in a way sedimented into the minds of the Indian people. You know, the concepts, the values, the nuances of living. Even today, you know, I mean, if you ask people, that we have such a structured life, we don't realize. Individual, individual की life, समाज की life, individual, अर्पण, समर्पण और तर्पण. आप जरा सुनिए इनको और नोट करिए, think about them. You understand their meaning and you will be happy to know that they come from the Vedas, you know, about 7,000 years ago. Arpan, Samarpan, Tarpan. This is what structures the individual life. And Utsav, Upavas or Upasana. Utsav, Upavas, Upasana. This is the social life. Social life. Again, the words come from long back. Now, this is one point I'd like to make, Daninoji. Then I think I'll ask you, let you ask one question. One moment, sir.
Can you explain those? Can you please explain? Because not everyone may understand Amarpan, Samarpan, Tarpan. Can you just...
See, you have to devote yourself to something. आपने अर्पण कर दिया. According to Sanatan Dharma, an individual, if he wants to lead a meaningful life, he has to, first of all, give himself to something. I have to do this. Arpan. Then Samarpan. He has to give his whole self to it. Whole self. With that commitment. Total commitment. And when he achieves something through that, then he, uska tarpan. He gives it away. It is done not for himself, but for the hit, welfare of others. That's why, sir, in every yajna, even today when some marriage ceremony is taking place, something taking place, जब हवन करते हैं, so when you put ahuti, you utter two words, idam namam. Idam namam. I am offering this, I am making this offering. That offering can be of ghee, that offering can be of an idea, that offering can be of your life. You know, as a soldier does. That I am offering this, idam namam, not for myself. Not for myself. That is tarpan. But for others, for the welfare of others. So if the goal of life is happiness, moksha is nothing but freedom from suffering here and now. And if the goal is happiness, you can't get happiness if you start looking for it for yourself. You will become happy only when you look for the happiness of others. That is tarpan. So idam namam, not for me, not for me. And in the social utsav, the Sanatan Dharma, the Sanatan way of life is very celebratory. The culture is very celebratory. And this is Sanskrit culture. I know you read Supreme Court, kindly read the 1994 Supreme Court judgment on Sanskrit. Kindly note down 1994 Supreme Court judgment on Sanskrit, where Justice Kuldeep Singh says, Sanskrit is not a language only. Sanskrit is the vocabulary of our thought and culture. Sanskrit is the vocabulary of our thought and culture. I was telling you percentages of vocabulary. You see, the minimum percentage of lexical source, Sanskrit source, is perhaps in Tamil, which is still about 70%. 70% of Tamil vocabulary is tatsam tadbhav from Sanskrit. And Malayalam has as high as 84%. Telugu has 81%. And Hindi, of course, you know. Punjabi, my mother tongue, 95%, 97% of my language is Sanskrit, tatsam tadbhav. If a good Punjabi scholar, you know, serious scholar, speaks Punjabi, you will feel that you are listening to Sanskrit. I will give you an example from a Sanskrit dialect, a dialect of Sanskrit, which is called Pothohari, and it is spoken in what is today Islamabad. You know, Islamabad, which was earlier Rawalpindi. It is called Pothohari. There is the person wants to say, where are you going? You know what he will say? Tuam kutra gachsa. This is Punjabi. Tuam kutra gachsa. Kutra gachsa. And Sanskrit is Tuam kutra gachasi. And I am telling you of the language today. Today, you see, so it's to say that Sanskrit is dead when you are using the words, Sanskrit words all the time, all the time, all the mind you're using. When your mind is infused with ideas which have come from them, when you lead your life by values which you have imbibed from the text of that language, when there are people who speak the language, when in your own life, on 16 occasions, the language will be used. Women, and women take their job very seriously. In a town like Pune, jo gad hai Sanskrit ka, I have been told that on ceremony, on ritual occasions like marriage and all that, people prefer the female priest because she will not cut short the mantras. She will do her job very seriously. And people have started, as a reaction, the new younger generation, they have started, keeping the books and reading the mantras along with that. And very often they ask the Pandit ji, ke iska arth bhi samjha dijiye. Arth bhi samjha dijiye. So the whole life is permeated by. We talk about Gita. Your Bhakti poetry. Bhakti poetry is a garland of all Indian languages. Bhakti Dravid Upuji. It started in Tamil Nadu. Lai Ramanand. It came with Ramanand right up to Banaras. But it went through, from Andal in Tamil Nadu, Andal to Baswanna, Karnataka, Dhyaneshwar, Maharashtra, Narsingh, Gujarat, Meera, then Shah Hussain in Punjab, Guru Nanak in Punjab, Ramanand, then Sarala Das of Odisha, then Jayadev in Bengal, and then Shankar Dev in Assam. They're all garland. And those people, these Bhakti poets, they have the common theme, common values. दया धर्म का मूल है, पाप मूल अभिमान, दया कभू न छाड़िए जब तक घट में प्राण, दया, क्षमा, forgiveness, क्षमा, dhairya, patience. These are the values which the Bhakti poets taught. And these are the values which come to you from the Dharma Shastras, from Dhamma Shastra. So you are every day, when you are reading Bhakti poetry, even if you are not reading Kabir, Kabira man nirmal bhaya jaise Ganga neer, pache pache hari phire kahat Kabir, and Kabir, endless amount of, this wisdom, language of wisdom. And this language of wisdom, thoughts of wisdom, they come from the same source. So, sir, your question, that is not only intellectual, it is daily life. It is the Kumbh Mela. If you go to a Mela, Kumbh Mela, you will have competing narrators, telling you the stories of Mahabharata, of Ramayana, of Bhagavad Puran, and you see, the vernacularization that took place of the Sanskrit Granthas, vernacularization. The first, even if you restrict yourself to epics and then to intellectual, Shabdamani Darpan, usme Kannada mein grammar 11वीं शताब्दी में बनी. But let us take the epics. Kamban in 9th century, translated Valmiki's Ramayana into Tamil. And Mahabharata was translated by three great Telugu minds over a period of 200 years. First person did 10, the second person after 100 years did 2 more, and third person after the 100 years till the last 6. All the 18 parvas, were translated. And there is no time now. It's not the subject also. You can see how the epics have been translated into all Indian languages. In fact, from Sanskrit to Indian languages, MILs, it is no translation. It is not a translation because the words are not changed. Words are the same. Only the grammatical endings are changed. Grammatical endings are changed. जैसे I have to give the example, तुम कुतर गच्छी, गच्छी कहाँ जाते हो? गच्छ. Even the elephant, gaccha. Gaccha से गज. Elephant का word बना गज. Because the from ancient times, the Bhavat, when he sat on the elephant, he would say gaccha, gaccha, gaccha. And the elephant came to be known as gaccha, gaj. And you have gaj. And you have the Gajapati, the king, the rulers of Odisha. I think you cannot look anywhere. You cannot visit a congregation. You cannot visit a mela. You can't read any modern novel in any Indian language written, if this written in the tradition. आप अगर वो Panchali by Vathiba Ray and Savant का मृत्युंजय कर्ण के ऊपर, how Mahabharata and Ramayana have been mined in by literatures and rich to communicate. So translation, then vernacularization, oral. Ramanujacharya, giving his discourses on Brahma Sutra in the 11th century, 10th and 11th century in Tamil. And the king, Chola king, objecting. No, you can't do it. It should be Sanskrit. He said, I am doing what Buddha did, language of the people. He was asked to go and he went to Mandya between Bangalore and Mysore. And the Mandya king gave him the place in Melkote in the Narsingha temple, where for 12 years, there is a platform still. Ramanujacharya sat there and gave discourses on Brahma Sutra in Tamil. Then, of course, they composed it in Sanskrit called Shri Bhashya. So this vernacularization and the Anuvada of the epics and the vernacularization, it democratized knowledge in India. An average Indian is a highly educated person. He may be a UNESCO illiterate, UNESCO will call him non-literate, but he is a highly educated person because knowledge in India is not elitist and it is not for the elite. It is for the common people. I could cite so many examples of, people who in today, ordinary people, people like an ordinary old woman of a small family in a village, coming for pilgrimage, traveling by the railway, second, third sleeper, you see, with a small potli, and you talk to her, or you talk to a rickshawala, the one who drives a rickshaw, or to an auto man, and you find profound wisdom in them because knowledge has been disseminated, transferred through the word of mouth. Oral tradition is the most democratic tradition of knowledge because all that the learner needs are the ears. God has not provided any flaps for the ears. There are flaps for the eyes. All that you have to do is to listen. The oral tradition is the most democratic. Although Lyotard claimed that now with the computer, we will democratize knowledge. Now, in order to learn from the computer, you have to have the money to buy the computer. You have to know how to read, how to learn English. You have to know how to set up the laptop, how to open the Zoom link, and how to unmute yourself, and then search and scroll, and then get some idea. Very democratic. How many? So people now talk of computer illiteracy. You see, computer illiteracy. So our culture being oral, the knowledge, orality, oral culture is oral not because we did not know writing. Not that. Ashoka's inscriptions come in 5 scripts, 4th century BC. You see, 5 scripts. And Panini uses the word lipi 7 times. Lipi. But oral structure of knowledge, oral system of knowledge is an alternative system. The Western knowledge system is scriptal, script, and the Indian system is oral. In the oral system, knowledge is created in the mind with your eyes shut, and it is stored in the mind. It is not stored outside in the paper or in the DVDs and all that. And it is transferred from mind to mind and disseminated through the oral discourse. Oral discourse. That's why it is democratic. And an average Indian, I could give you lovely examples. A professor, maybe I have already given some time, a professor in sitting outside BHU, Lanka में, BHU के बाद जो जगह उसको लंका कहते हैं, क्योंकि वहां जो रामायण है, रामलीला पूरे शहर में होती है. अयोध्या उस तरफ है और लंका है BHU के बाहर. तो वहां सुबह लोग चाय पीते हैं बैठ के. Very peaceful, early morning. And there is of course, it is Varanasi. Varanasi, they say, is a place, if those who go there, they don't want to go back. So when the mango went to Varanasi, didn't want to go, so mango became langda. बनारस का लंगड़ा आम है ना, उसको लंगड़ा आम कहते हैं. तो वो लंगड़ा इसलिए हो गया कि वो वापस जाना नहीं चाहता था. तो वाराणसी has an aura and an air. It is Kashi is the world's oldest continuously alive city of the world. Kashi, please note, I am repeating, Kashi is the world's oldest continuously alive city of the world. So when you go there outside city, morning tea, and on the bench, a person was sitting with his feet on the bench, and the sofa, apparently a rickshawala, lost in his thoughts. And this professor of English from a very good university, my friend, we sat there. There were only those 2 seats were there with that gentleman. We sat, and this professor started. How beautiful, how calm, how peaceful, how clean. What a pity that Ganga मैली हो गई. What a pity that Ganga has been polluted. He said it once, he said it twice, he said it thrice. And then that gentleman said, Sir Babuji, can I say something? He says, yes. We said, yes. If your hands become dirty, how do you clean them? Say, with water. If the floor gets dirty, how do you clean? With water. Anything gets dirty, how do you clean? With water. Babuji, if what cleans everything, how can that become dirty? What cleans everything? हमारी भाषा में बड़ा अच्छा है. बाबूजी, जो सबको स्वच्छ करती है, वो जल गंदा कैसे हो सकता है? अशुद्ध कैसे हो सकता है? उन्होंने कहा नहीं, we see there are garlands and there are bones and there are other things there and it's very muddy also. And he said, Babuji, jal, water, it carries the things, but it does not get permeated. Like the air, it carries fragrance and also the bad odor, but the air does not get polluted with it. After some time, the odor and fragrance, everything disappears. So water also does not get polluted. The professor said, no, people who want to have a bath, you see, when they look at all that, they don't want to jump into it. He said, Babuji, who told you that people who bathe in the Ganga, they bathe in the water? They don't bathe in the water. वो अपने ध्येय में स्नान करते हैं, ध्येय में. ध्येय में, उनका जो ध्येय है माइंड में, गंगा, गंगा फॉर देम इज एन आइडिया, गंगा फॉर देम इज नॉट वाटर, गंगा फॉर देम इज ए प्यूरिफायर। तो वो तो उसमें स्नान करते हैं, उनको तो दिखता नहीं है, दे डोंट सी, they don't see. But those who don't have the dhyaya, sir, he said, sir, like you see, because you don't have the dhyaya, you see only water. Ganga is not jal. And he quoted from Ramayana, Angad telling Ravan, this man, who is a UNESCO illiterate person. He is telling us that Angad told when Ravan said, के राम के बारे में, तुम एक पुरुष के पीछे हो, पुरुष, एक ह्यूमन बीइंग के पीछे, योर फादर वाज सच ए ग्रेट वॉरियर एंड you're a follower of a man. Then Angad, because we are told in our culture that जो जिस चीज को आप सेक्रेड मानते हो या जो आपके लिए सेक्रेड है, जो आपसे बड़े बूढ़े हैं, उनकी अगर कोई उनके बारे में कोई गलत बात बोले तो आपको सुनना नहीं है, या तो उसे कॉन्ट्राडिक्ट करो या वहां से उठ के चले जाओ. यू शुड नॉट लिसन टू दोस थिंग्स. सो अंगद ने पैर मारा जोर से, ही सेड, और उसको कहा रावण, वाचाल, ही सेड, वाचाल, क्या कदली एक पेड़ है? क्या हिमालय केवल पर्वत है? और क्या गंगा केवल नदी है? क्या राम केवल पुरुष है? He said, sir, Ganga is not a river. And Justice Kuldeep Singh, in a Supreme Court judgment, says, Sanskrit is not only a language. It is the vocabulary of our thought and culture. And it is very much alive. If we are alive, it's because we are permeated by the values, thought, and ideas of all these things. Anyway, sir, you wanted to ask something, say something?
Thank you very much, Kapilji. You've already given us such a rich landscape